So, fine. The lead story tonight in TWiB Nation, there was a report yesterday that came through that was actually I was tagged on social media on Twitter that there was a group of activists that were being profiled at a Bernie Sanders campaign. And the claim was that they were actually being stopped from entering the rally because they were in fact black, and that they were worried about some sort of disruption that was about to happen. This is what initially was read as what happened. And so I reached out. First of all, my first response to this was like, please tell me this is not actually true. And I hope there's something else going on here. So I reached out to some of the activists that were that had made the accusations. And I also tagged the Sanders campaign asking for clarification. And so in the end, we actually got a note from someone in the Sanders campaign that requested anonymity on this. And then we got actually a couple of anonymous accounts of what occurred, and we actually have someone on the record as well as to what actually occurred last night. And so we've actually put together with all of this information, with both getting information from both sides, we have kind of an understanding of what apparently happened and what caused, because like immediately, as soon as the calls for that this happened, more people jumped in everyone's mentions, like jumped in my mentions, they jumped in the activists' mentions, yelling about like, how dare you lie on Bernie Sanders? And they just immediately flipped out. And I just need, the first thing before we even get into this, I need everyone to calm the hell down. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes you guys think that in order to make something right, if you yell at us enough, you become right. And that's not actually how any of this works. There were no, you can't yell things correctly. Either it happened or it didn't happen, and we can easily find out what actually occurred based on the various sources that came in. So, what actually happened? What actually occurred in this situation? Apparently, there was a group of activists, about 7 activists, young black women, who attended the Bernie Sanders rally. I think it was an event, and Bernie Sanders was speaking at it, and they attended this event. They actually were going there to flyer about the immigration policies that were happening. They were passing out flyers about this. Actually, I have a quote from one of the young women there. She said, 7 of us went to the rally with flyers to hand out. We live in Minneapolis with a big African diaspora, and the ICE raids are affecting my friends, their families, and etc. So that's what apparently that's what the activists said they were coming there to do. Once they actually arrived there and were handing out flyers, some of them were actually approached by the Sanders campaign. Apparently, the Sanders campaign was looking for people to stand behind Bernie Sanders during his speech. And if you watch any type of a political event, you'll notice that like the politician's on stage and he has a crowd of people behind him, and it like shows like, look, these are the people, and I'm speaking for the people, and then they clap and everything. It's like, woo, it's all magical and shit, right? Cool. So some of them were asked to actually be on stage, and they were given green wristbands in order to do so. So that you will be able to enter into the area where you can eventually go backstage and be on stage with Bernie Sanders. So this is how all this actually occurred. So they're currently in the rally. They were passing out flyers, and they actually were trying to get backstage after being requested. Now, not everyone in this group had wristbands. Like some, a good few of them did. Some didn't, but they went with them. And I've been in a situation like this where like someone has passed and everyone kind of like walks with them. And they were saying that they, in all honesty, they just wanted to sit down, and there wasn't a lot of places to sit at the time. And I believe the Sanders campaign pushed out that it was a really well attended rally. So that makes actual sense. So they were trying to go back, and when they went to the staging area, apparently they were stopped. And this is actually corroborated by the Sanders campaign. I received word from them, and that they were stopped. The Sanders campaign says that they received a tip that some of them were there to in fact disrupt the event, which, I mean, in all honesty, Imani, I think you can say that like if you got information that someone was going to disrupt an event and you were like running it, you can make the argument that it would be reasonable to say, hey, we want to make sure that these people don't disrupt the event that our candidate is having.
Agreed.
Correct?
Yes.
Yes. So I mean, and that's fine. And now they said that they were alerted by a family member of one of the young women who was going inside that was going to disrupt this event, and so They were stopped. They stopped them, and then all of a sudden now these people who had green wristbands can't get in, and they're like, "What are you talking about? Why can't we get in?" And they actually were specifically pointed out who couldn't go in. Aaron, I think we have actually video of that.
This person who's filming me, that person in the blue hat, this person with the blue lipstick, this person here, and this person here.
I didn't touch you. I'm telling you to stay back. I can get y'all kicked off. You want me sometimes?
Are you playing yourself about being kicked off?
I'm not.
Pretty sure that's not what Bernie Sanders stands for.
Okay, I'm just going to go.
So if we don't get in,
Everybody who is with the group. I'm sorry, I cannot.
Pull it back, Aaron.
I'm sorry,
So, what you heard in the midst of that that clip there is that there's someone saying that I don't know her, like, because he started pointing people out, and what so happened is that he was pointing out all the young black activists that were in that space, and he was pointing out each one of them, and someone's even saying I don't know her. So like you're saying that we can't go in, but like you're putting everyone in a group that don't belong in the group. So they were stopped, and clearly tensions were high there because you're being stopped. You feel as if you're being actively profiled, and this is also a situation with a campaign that has been having issues with people of color, especially black folks who have been protesting at some of these events. Interesting fact. After speaking with one of the 7 women that were a part of that particular group, they say that they were not, in fact, planning to have any type of disruption. Now, you might be a little bit confused by that. Like, what? I watched the Bernie Sanders stream. I know that they disrupted. Interesting fact. They didn't disrupt because they had actually went there to disrupt. According to the first-person accounts from them, they actually disrupted after they were profiled. And they were profiled because they were, like, say, young black. They supposedly got a tip, but according to the young activists, they don't know whose brother of this group of 7 that would have given them that information, given the staff of the Sanders campaign that information. They're saying that there wasn't anyone there to be able to do that. So I'm inclined to believe, I mean, if one of your brothers was at this event with you and then he told on you, I believe you'd be like, my brother's a dick or whatever. You would say that, right, Imani? Like you wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't. I just that part of the Sanders campaign story does not ring true to me.
Right? Yeah, it sounds off. Now, I cannot. I can't. I'm not going to say who's lying, who's not. I'm going to, with good faith, go with what seems to be the case here. So, one, they were not claiming that they were being actually held stops from entering the rally. They actually were inside the rally. I said they were handing out flyers. They actually were given wristbands that actually allowed them to go backstage, some of them, and then they were stopped in the midst of that. And so what we're seeing, what seems to have happened is that, because like real talk, I don't believe that the Sanders campaign actually was like, you know what, no Negroes today. I don't believe that what's happened. I don't believe that I don't believe that these activists are just flat out lying. When I say flat out, I don't mean of that framing. I don't believe they're just lying about this thing. Mm-hmm. What I do believe is that they went there. They didn't actually. They were handing out flyers. They were doing that. And I actually asked. I know that one of the questions that you might think of. They're like, well, then why did they even take the wristbands to go on stage? Because they don't like Bernie Sanders. Apparently, they, like I said, the issue was about immigration. They wanted to hand out flyers around that, but the people that were actually went on stage flat out, they just kind of wanted to be on TV. You know what I mean? Like, they were like, it was going to be broadcast. It was being covered everywhere. They wanted to be on television. So
which a lot of people do. I mean,
a lot of people do. Like
yeah.
you see
people at sports games behind reporters like throwing up bunny ears and acting the fool. Yeah, it's not a big deal.
Right. And so we know that occurs. So the people that were trying to go on stage, they were blocked, but at one point they were actually allowed backstage, but then they were stopped and they were held. And there was one accusation that the dude in the gray suit had actually held one of their arms in an attempt to try to get back the green wristband. And the Sanders campaign said that's not what they heard, and that's not what happened. So I just want to be very clear that they have denied that particular allegation. They did say that they weren't going to let people that they thought was disrupting on stage because it could be a safety concern. Which, again, I'm not actually arguing that's unreasonable. If you actively think someone is about to disrupt and you're running the event, you probably don't want them to disrupt your event. Fine. What's the issue here is specifically how did they decide whether or not who was a disruptor, who wasn't? And then, like you can hear them specifically saying, I'm not with them, but they were all put together. Why? young black young and black, because we don't even know if the other people are activists. They could have just genuinely really liked Bernie Sanders. You know what I mean? So what does all this mean? So, because clearly we're not saying that the Sanders campaign is racist, because that's never been my argument. What this does show is yet again a bigger situation, a bigger issue, because even as they were being told specifically, you, none of you can come in, white allies were standing all around, said nothing. There was a yelling match or whatever. White allies said nothing. This was something that was specifically brought up by the young activists. Like, how could you sit there and just, as they're yelling at us and telling us all this nonsense, and that's not what we're here for. You now yell at us. You actually just allow it to sit there and run. That's not okay. And we've seen these type of issues across the country. We've seen a similar situation with Netroots Nation when the young activists, when Black Lives Matter actually went there and they protested. They were protesting the actual town hall meeting, but they were Bernie Sanders happened to be there, much like Martin O'Malley was there, and they were yelled at by by people that were there, Bernie supporters, saying that we should have called the cops on them. Right? We've seen in Seattle when Marissa Janae and some other folks were actively protesting Sanders, protesting that event, and then what they were being yelled at there. I believe we played it, and we actually had the audio from it where people were literally yelling at them to shut up and go away, and they were called names. It was specifically an issue around that. So what we're seeing here is not so much just this one-off situation. We're seeing something that's playing into a bigger problem. We're seeing something where young black folks are seen as a problem in general because they're speaking out, because they're calling out what they feel are injustices, and in many cases they are in fact correct about the injustices that are happening. And we're seeing a lack of trust. So the people there were so scared that a disruption was going to happen, so they started actually picking out black folks in the audience, like, the black people might actually have a problem. The black folks are not happy about being picked out, and so then they actively then cause a disruption, which then makes everyone else say, see, this is why we treat them that way. Where you're not actually acknowledging the fact that perhaps you should be listening to the activists. Perhaps you should understand where they're coming from. In this specific situation, again, I've asked the activists actively. They were not planning, they've said it on Twitter, they said it directly to me, they were not planning to disrupt this event. So, Imani, how do people not see the larger discussion here about the fact that this supposed coalition, and especially a coalition that the Sanders campaign has said that they want to build and they want to cross all these boundaries or whatever, how this coalition can work when folks within the coalition are seen as the problem?
The coalition is bullshit.
Thank you, Imani. That was... I sat there. I just laid out like 1,500 words or something.
Yeah, but
bullshit.
The coalition. You were just saying the other day. This is one. Fuck the coalition. You know the coalition is bullshit. There's already a coalition. Do you know what that coalition is? It's a coalition of Obamacrats, Obama bots, Obama lovers, as I was once called back in 2011 by a white woman. You dirty Obama lover. They are trying so hard to pretend like President Obama didn't win with this groundswell of support from, like, what was it? Something like 98% of black voters voted for him. There is a coalition. It's the Obama coalition. It's what OFA built in order to elect him twice. And Bernie Sanders is out here chasing the white vote. And by doing that, he's not focusing enough on issues of racial justice. And his followers, his supporters, mostly white people, aren't that concerned about racial justice. They're concerned about class injustice, which is fine. I'm concerned about economic injustice as well. And I do believe that economic injustice and racial injustice are tied together, but they are not one and the same. Sandra Bland didn't die because she didn't have a job. If all of a sudden, if all of the banks were destroyed and everyone was at credit unions and everyone and the middle class was uplifted, there would still be racism. And there's a woman on Twitter who tweets as Propane Jane. It's like Doc Text 26. She was making some great points, and I'll tweet some of her tweets and her handle so you can go read some of what she was saying. But essentially what's interesting about Bernie Sanders is he's a socialist, or a social democrat, I would call him, I guess. But the reason that socialism won't work, which is the redistribution of wealth, is because we are a racist society, and there are racist people who believe that black people don't deserve anything. So how are you going to fix the racism Without, how are you gonna? I don't understand it. How is Bernie Sanders planning on doing anything about racial justice that is not tied to economic injustice? I feel like he could be leading. He could be leading on this issue, and he's not. He could be leading on the harassment and the bullying that's going on social media, but he's not. He had one of his campaign staffers tweet something. Oh, let's be a little bit more respectful. 6 months into this bullshit primary campaign. There's just,
is that what happened? Because I got a email from a writer with the BBC asking about BBC News or something, asking about that, and they were like, "Oh, I'm trying to understand what's happening," and I found it really interesting, like that people are still trying to understand what's going on with this. So even though we've been discussing this type of harassment of people who have said anything that's not completely and totally pro Bernie, we've been discussing it a lot. But I think now that Ta-Nehisi Coates is also now highlighting this with his platform, people are like, "Oh, yeah, apparently people are having an issue," and I didn't know that someone from the campaign had actually said it. Was it the communications manager, Imani?
Yeah, his communications manager. His name is Mike Casca.
Okay, yeah, I was unaware of that.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's just. I'm honestly, I know you said you're still listening, and to be, if I'm being really honest, I'm still listening too, but I'm mostly shut down. I really am. I mean, I sat and watched some of these activists who are really, really upset. One woman said that she's tired, she's done protesting because she's so disheartened by it all. These are progressive white people treating people of color like shit, both in real life and online. That's the bottom line. What makes you think we want to be part of your coalition? What makes you think we want to be part of your revolution? We are already fighting our own revolution. Come join ours. Because if you join ours, we can fix both things. But what you're doing is saying, fuck your revolution. You need to join our. I can't. I'm done. I'm really just done. I watch people camp out in these young activists' mentions for literally 14 hours, calling them trolls, ghetto, thug, like all of just this wildly racist stuff. As they kept tweeting out that the video that showed them disrupting the event after they'd already been racially profiled, calling these women, "Oh, you're a liar. Why are you such a liar? You were led into the event. It's not racism, it's this."
So that's a big part of this, Imani, and that's why I want to make sure that we're clear on this, because people immediately, like said, they had their own description of how this works, and they called the women liars, and anyone who said anything in support of them, immediately they were attacked as well, and we need to be clear on what happened is what people took was the tweets. They then decided what the tweets meant, and there was actually clarification on some of these Twitter accounts about what happened. They were like, no, we were allowed in. We were stopped at a very specific spot. We weren't allowed actually on the stage. Actually, after we were invited onto the stage. And again, this is a part of the problem. And the thing I want to be clear here is that I understand the point. I understand, I'm not calling the fact that they were looking for Negroes to get on stage. That's not that abnormal. Like I said, for events like that, speaking to other political folks, they say that's actually something that's fairly normal. The idea that they were nervous about about a disruption, fine, I can get that. But once you start to specifically call out people in groups, and when they're saying we're not a part of that group, and you're saying, so no, I'm sorry, I can't let you in. Now, please note this. I think it was basically a big case of CYA. People were trying to cover their ass. And cool, I get why you might do that. But you have to ask yourself how you're doing it. What's actually happening here? And how is this going to affect people that could be on your side? Like, do you really think that people who feel as if they were racially profiled are going to ever decide to support Bernie Sanders?
Yeah.
Like, this is something that could have easily went the other way.
Especially after he said at the last debate that the reason that he doesn't have a lot of black voters support is because people don't know him. How are people going to get to know you openly and in good faith if you treat them like shit? They're getting to know you, but not in the way you want.
Right, and that is in fact the issue about how are we getting to know them? How are they aware of them? How are they aware of how they interact with them? And this just doesn't look good. And that was one of the main reasons why I made sure to contact the Sanders campaign so I could get word from them about how this went, because I wanted to make sure that we weren't being unfair or seeming like as we were attacking the Sanders campaign. I wanted to make sure that we actually got the information that lined up, and the fact is the stories do line up. what each group says. One group says that they were tipped off. The question is, how were you tipped off? Because there's the protesters like, there's no one in our group that could have done that. No, we don't have brothers that would come to you and tell you that we were planning a disruption, especially because we weren't planning a disruption. And I even got some off the record stuff that I'm not actually allowed to really get into. That actually makes me, like I said, lean towards understanding why exactly the argument that they're making is what is their argument. Same thing, but at the same time, I don't believe, like, Imani, I don't think they've said no Negroes.
Of course I don't think they said no Negroes. Not at all. I think they were afraid. Exactly what happened. I think they were afraid of the disruption. They saw, I mean, did you see a picture of the crowd? That crowd was white as fuck. That's 3, I'm out. It was so white. It was so white. And I think that they saw a group of black activists handing out flyers. They got a little freaked out after Seattle, after Netroots, and they were like, well, we got to make sure that these people don't disrupt. So they just profiled the shit out of all of them.
And that's the issue here. The issue is like, how is this coalition going to work if no one trusts the other?
Nah, not gonna
Because
work.
I know personally, I lack a lot of trust for a lot of these folks that are in this space and how they talk about people, how they attack folks. Like immediately, I was asking questions last night. Immediately was attacked. It was like, dude, like really?
They
like,
are
I was
relentless.
asked like, well, how long have you been on the Hillary payroll? Like for asking questions. Like, was I supposed to not listen? And here's one of the arguments against it. One of the women that was tweeting about the action, she had in her profile like a bunch of things, like Twitter profiles. It's like there's an art to a Twitter profile, the way you describe yourself and all this stuff. And in her profile, she had pro-ho. And he was like, "Oh, so you're gonna listen to someone who makes an argument with they have pro-ho in their bio?" And I was like, "So you're going to shame her for having pro-ho? Like that's a statement. Like you can't. I'm not gonna roll around with your shaming bullshit. The fact is, she can say I like to fucks on the reg and still." And still be someone that we should listen to and have.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter what what her sexual.